In this story, a unicorn alligator in Natchitoches, where civil rights be damned, it's ID or jail. A man in the library with some cameras fights a word salad of tyranny. A librarian contradicts a local newspaper.
Did you ever see him try to access any areas of the library that are off limits or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
A city judge sees through the eyes of the police, who play an after-arrest game of cover your ass. A cop interviews a witness and does 51% of the talking. And Travis Heinze is not guilty. Welcome back to the Pig Trader channel. I'm Robert Parker. Here we cover police misconduct in violation of civil liberties. We continue coverage of Travis Heinze, arrested and wrongfully convicted for failure to identify in the Natchitoches Parish Public Library in Louisiana. To get spatially oriented, see the corresponding red arrows inside and outside the library, above the bookmobile. For those who have not already seen the alleged crime, here's the arrest video from "What's your name?" to "You're under arrest." If you've already seen it, now's a good time to skip forward 1 minute and 55 seconds, or take this opportunity to like and subscribe.
What's your name, boss?
What's that have to do with anything?
Get your hand out of there.
Oh, sorry. So we got Favors, F-A-V-O-R.
23, where you at?
All right. And what's your name?
Officer Davis, badge number 143.
Davis? Okay. Yeah, I just came in, to use the library and all that, so, is it unusual that people use the library?
No.
We got Miller, 3 cops. All right. Well, nice to meet you all. Sorry you got called on me.
Okay.
What was the exact suspicion? What I did is I came in, I walked around, looked around, I'd never been here before.
Okay.
And then I...
Where are you from? Well, stop. You haven't answered my question. What is your name?
Well, what's the crime? That's what we have to establish.
We have a report of a suspicious person matching you,
right.
Meaning that we have a reason to talk to you.
All right.
And right now I'm asking you what your name is, and if you don't provide me with some sort of identification, that is resisting officer.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
So
I'm going to ask you one more time.
How are you going to go above my constitutional protections on this? Because there's no crime.
So that's how we know.
Officer, is that sergeant? Or, is there any sergeant?
Sir, what is your name?
Hold on.
There's no crime.
Okay. All about suspicious person.
All right.
You're fitting that description, okay?
Yeah.
That's what you've been recorded too, but you're fitting that description.
You guys never give me your recording, so I get my own.
Well, it's a public record, so you can use it.
No, every time
So
I've
like I
asked other
said,
cops, they
I'm
never
also
give
from
me
the
your...
police department, you got called by a suspicious person. You're matching that identity.
Yeah,
You're matching
green-
the clothing description.
Green
What is your
sweater.
name?
There's no crime.
Okay.
All right, let me put this down.
Next, we'll hear the totality of communications heard by police before Travis was arrested. If you're already familiar, fast forward 2 minutes. First, the librarian calls the non-emergency number of the police.
Legacy Department, may I help you?
Oh, yes. This is when I'm calling from the Natchitoches Parish Library. Did you have an officer come by here? There is a patron here that's acting very strange.
I'm sorry. Can you hold just a moment for me?
Yes.
Thank you.
35-second hold time clipped.
I'm sorry about that, ma'am. You said there's somebody suspicious in the library?
Yes. He's acting really strange. He has some backpacks with him, and he's looking around the place. I asked him if I could help him. He asked me what did I want to help him with. Then he tried to go up to the 3rd floor, which is locked, and checking all the doors and everything. I don't know.
Can you give me a description of him?
White male, I guess about 6 feet tall. He has, it looks like he had like a little beard.
What is he wearing now?
Oh, I walked outside to call you because I didn't want him to know I was calling.
Okay.
I'm not, I think he had a green army jacket on. I think he did.
Okay, I'll get someone en route.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next, some information is dispatched to Officer Davis.
Equals to 125.
25.
Picture up to the next parish library. It's going to be a suspicious white male, about 6 foot tall, possibly wearing a green army jacket, acting suspicious, like he's casing the library, checking doors to see which ones are locked and which ones are not. They just want someone to check on it.
Yeah.
Then, arriving at the library, Officer Davis talks with the librarian.
Yeah, he's being really weird. He tried to go up to the 3rd floor. He checked our emergency exits and stuff. Like, he's being real weird.
Okay.
He is in the building.
3rd floor. Let's go see about him.
Oh, 2nd floor.
2nd floor? Okay.
And he'll be back by the magazine. So if you walk to the back, you'll see where he is.
Let's set out the timeline in 4 parts. First, Travis entered the library and was observed by librarians. We'll come back to part 2. Third, after being detained, Travis was arrested for failure to ID. Fourth, in the days that followed the arrest, police investigated further. They got a written statement from the lady librarian, claimed they lost it, and got another written statement. Then, video meetings. First with the male librarian, and second with the lady librarian, 5 and 6 days after the arrest. Now back to part 2, the only important segment of time relevant to any justifiable detention of Travis. The communications with the police leading up to the detention. Next, we demonstrate that by Louisiana law, Travis is factually innocent. Travis did not commit any crime. We will show deceitful police reporting as Officers Davis and Miller tried, after the arrest, to cover their violation of Travis's rights. Next, police detectives brought witnesses back onto their interview playground and coached them on how to spin their stories. Travis was convicted by a 1-person elected jury, Judge Owsley, whose 2020 campaign for Ward 1 judge included a map of his territory outlined in a thin blue line and a cropped image that read Thin Blue Area. Judge Owsley sentenced Travis to 30 days in the Natchitoches Parish Detention Center. Within today's story, we correct a popular untruth propagated by individuals either mistaken, strategic, or stubborn that Natchitoches Parish, Louisiana is by right a zone of no tolerance where you have 2 choices: show your ID or go to jail. This untruth is that there's a lawful Louisiana requirement of immediate ID compliance with the police, that Louisiana is a unique and special stop and ID unicorn, and 4th Amendment decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court can get to the back of the bus. But first, some thanks for some praise received within the comments section of Travis Heinze's Police Interactions channel, Let's Exchange IDs. Sons of Thunder wrote, "Must watch, Pig Trader channel." Hugh Ahuele responded, "The guy who looks like General Norman? Him rocking the look hard? That suit. Wow." Thank you both, Sons of Thunder and Hugh Ahuele, for the promotion and the encouragement. Before we dive in deeper, let's test the waters for unicorn alligators as we hear Officers Davis and Miller in the library with guns and handcuffs state their theories of stop and ID.
We have a report of a suspicious person matching you, meaning that we have a reason to talk to you. And right now I'm asking you what your name is, and if you don't provide me with some sort of identification, that is resisting an officer.
I'm Officer with the Natchitoches Police Department. Officer, got a call about a suspicious person. You're fitting that description, okay? What is your name?
There's no crime.
Okay, now you're under arrest.
This position that ID is immediately required upon any level of police suspicion seems to be substantially supported by the residents of Natchitoches. Gary T. writes,
"The legal bar in Louisiana for requirement to provide ID is reasonably suspicious behavior. That's all the Louisiana law required. 10th Amendment to the Constitution allows for this."
Detective Parrott of the Natchitoches Police Department presents the same view.
It's pretty by the book kind of stuff. Whenever a citizen calls and they ask that we check into someone or check into anything per se, and then they give the same descriptors that you gave, that they're acting odd or suspicious, whatever that degree of suspicion may be, that's still in Louisiana, it's what we call reasonable suspicion that they either have committed, about to commit, or actively committing a crime. Whenever that happens, when you're in that reasonable suspicion area, that's when the offender or the suspect, wherever the term may be for them, they have to identify themselves to law enforcement. When he refused to do so, I think 2 or 3 times, that's when he was arrested.
Like so whenever a citizen calls and they ask that we check into someone or check into anything, and then they give that they're acting odd or whatever, that's still in Louisiana, it's what we call reasonable suspicion. That's when the offender or the suspect, they have to identify themselves. When he refused to do so, that's when he was arrested.
Natchitoches Police ain't special. This extreme position of Officers Davis and Miller and Detective Parrott is indefensible. This bull-rushing conduct is not permitted by the law as written by the Louisiana legislature. Natchitoches Police failed to uphold Travis's Fourth Amendment protection against unlawful detention, as recognized by the Louisiana Supreme Court. And not only is Miller wrong on the law, he is also arrogant in his ignorance.
Travis Heinze. All right, right now you're under arrest, all right, for resisting. Well, you don't know the law. Figure out Louisiana laws first before you come down here and start talking crazy to us.
Hang tight, viewers. We'll get back to the arrest, the evidence, and the cover-up in 2 minutes. But first, a look at the law and trips to the law library and the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll look into the Constitution second. First, we address the Louisiana Resisting an Officer statute. We'll make quick work of removing the surplus wordage in red. And all dressed up, it looks like this. It's intentional, the detention is lawful, and the offender knows it. If there's any question about the required element that the suspect must have reason to know he's being lawfully detained, that uncertainty is removed by 218.1, which instructs the officers that they are in fact required to advise the detainee of the reasons for the investigation. And those protections are written in by the Louisiana State Legislature, mindful of U.S. Supreme Court Fourth Amendment instructions. If Travis had been tried by a jury, that jury should have been given a simple instruction like this one. If you've served on a criminal trial jury, you've probably seen this type of step-by-step jury instruction. At step 1, we'll see here that the detention was unlawful because the officers lacked the lawful kind of reasonable suspicion. And we'll see that the officers proceeded after the arrest to fabricate evidence because somebody in Natchitoches knew that their unicorn brand of suspicion wasn't really sufficient. At step 2, no reasonable jury member using the beyond a reasonable doubt standard would find that Travis should have known he was lawfully detained.
We have a report of a suspicious person matching you.
Got a call about a suspicious person. Suspicious person.
Someone matching your description was acting suspiciously.
I mean, what was the exact suspicion? What was the exact suspicious nature of the, what was the exact complaint? Because, I mean, suspicious is pretty broad.
Someone matching your description was acting suspiciously.
Suspicious?
Yeah.
Suspicious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have seen how the failure to identify violation should be read, and how that should lead to a proper jury instruction. Now let's see how the Natchitoches Police read and apply the statute. Seeing that Part B1C of the statute has the words refusal by the detained party to give his name, that's all they want to see. And blocking out the other 4 types of obstruction content, and ignoring Part A's essential call for attention, these officers bounced in from their world of unicorns and rainbows and saw their shiny pot of gold.
What's your name, boss? What is your name? And right now I'm asking you what your name is.
Sir, what is your name?
What's your name?
And the unicorn policy was played out. ID or jail. To show in an unbiased manner that Louisiana higher courts do in fact follow the Supreme Court's interpretation of Fourth Amendment rights, we performed a search for relevant cases as highlighted in orange and took the first item on the list. We found State v. Clay from the Louisiana Court of Appeals in 2006. In this case, the suspect was detained on unicorn suspicion, and the cocaine found on the person was used to obtain a drug conviction. Removing any doubt that Louisiana higher courts are serious about the Fourth Amendment, this appellate court ruled that the detention was invalid and ordered that the evidence be suppressed. The court addresses Procedure 215.1, which prosecutor Cloyd Benjamin put forward in Travis's trial as justification for officers detaining Travis. 215.1 does not define its functional phrase, reasonable suspicion. The court notes, however, that this reasonable suspicion attaches its working definition from the interpretation of the U.S. Supreme Court. The court goes on to discuss the reliability of a caller's or an informant's tip, and directs that a police decision to detain a suspect must assess the reliability of the caller's provided information. Getting more specific, the court instructs that independent police observation is required in order to justify a detention, referencing Alabama v. White. That case is even more specific and will form our focus. Because an informant is shown to be right about some things, he is probably right about other facts that he has alleged. Let's see how a Constitution-respecting Davis should have acted. Let's go back and look at the dispatcher's message to Officer Davis. Here are the specifics. The dispatcher introduced the word suspicious and used it twice, and that's why we lined through it twice. The items with green check marks were correctly communicated as spoken by the caller. The red highlighted items with the X's were crafted by the dispatcher. Blending in the 20-second face-to-face conversation with the librarian, here's what Davis rightly knew as he confronted Travis. With uncertainty in some items, the glaring single data point that might suggest criminal activity is this green army jacket, which suggests tactical gear that might be consistent with some ill intent. It must be part of the initial investigation. Yet, officers were untruthful in their reports and in trial. Officer Favors testified she was investigating a man in an army green jacket. Officer Davis wrote and testified green-colored jacket. It's clear that these word choices were intentionally deceptive, glossing over their lack of required attention to detail. Let's move on to Davis's police report, shown here first in its raw text form, and next with color highlights. See a lot of red? All of this is fabrication. We have clear record of the librarian's call, the dispatch, and the face-to-face. Davis testified in trial that he was trained to write police reports that are truthful, accurate, and complete. These items in red are either embellishments or outright lies. And while Travis was later accused of having pornography on his computer screen when approached by Davis, there's no mention of that in Davis's claimed truthful, accurate, and complete report here. Nor is it in Favors' report or in Miller's report. This pornography accusation only became documented for the first time in a second report by Davis, dated 4 days after the arrest, but even that is questionable. It's worth noting that at the time of Travis's arrest, this softly pornographic image was openly displayed in the library. We have appropriately pasted the image using Judge Owsley's campaign material. What's the reason for these fabrications? Why not the truth, Davis? Just the truth. Well, the requirement for the lawful detention of Travis was cited in State v. Clay from two sources, the U.S. Supreme Court and another Louisiana court. The officer must articulate his suspicion based only on information in hand before the detention. That information is not in question. It was all recorded. And here we have the reliable information in green and the verifiably false information in red. What's left after a mere identification is checking the doors, tried to go to the third floor, and checked our emergency exits. Davis is required to evaluate the reliability of these statements, required by the courts, both the United States and Louisiana. Here's what he should have done. First, Davis should have checked his ego and remembered the principles he serves. Then, he should have used the observational training he testified about in trial. White male, 6 feet, easy enough, looks like this is the guy. Green army jacket? Wrong. Maybe the reporting party embellished. Checking the doors? Checking our emergency exit? Not sure what that means. That needs further investigation. But green army jacket? Tried to go to the 3rd floor? Is that a bad thing? Did he actually go into any restricted areas? I need to know more. But again, green army jacket? Being weird and strange? You know what's weird and strange? Saying somebody's wearing a green army jacket. We mentioned earlier some police playground interviews of 2 witnesses. These fall in the timeline part 4, well after the arrest. These interviews contradict accusations against Travis made in a local newspaper with viewership size as indicated by their YouTube posting of the swearing in of Judge Owsley last year, which has received a whopping 209 views. Still, the mistakes are worthy of correction. While this entire paragraph is questionable, we focus on the final 2 statements, that Travis tried to access areas restricted to the public, and that Travis pulled on door handles to access these areas.
And he continued on through the building, and he was walking around looking like he was looking for something or looking for a spot.
And on the 2nd floor was you and Miss Rosamond. What is there a 3rd floor?
Yeah, but that's administration. He didn't go up there.
And then he went back over by the stairwell, but he didn't go into the stairwell, and he didn't go up. He just leaned his head in and looked up to see what was up there.
Morning shift. So that's.
Did you ever see him try to access any areas of the library that are off limits or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
He mostly stayed on the 2nd floor, and we don't really have, other than the circulation desk, the patrons can just walk around. Okay.
All right. And then he went over towards the exit by the DVDs, which is one of our emergency exits, and he kind of touched that door and stuff.
And walked around, and then we have the DVDs right here, and then an emergency exit right here. And then he didn't even acknowledge the DVDs. He just looked at the exit, looked up and down, and then he did this, and then he walked back.
Said, "Hi, how are you today?" And which is what I do with everyone that comes in the building, and he just didn't acknowledge me, and he continued on through the building.
Yeah, I asked him how he was doing, and he completely ignored me, but I didn't think anything of it, because people sometimes are mission oriented, they're like, I'm gonna get this thing, and I don't want to get distracted. So.
In Detective Parrott's interview of the lady librarian, we counted words. The detective talked more than the witness. This was far from an interview. It was a coaching session. Here's an example.
That's why I wanted you in here today. Sort of tell me, I can see how you felt, and then if it needs to push into the case, I can see how you feel. So if this goes to a jury trial, which potentially could, potentially couldn't, it's just a misdemeanor crime that he committed. However, if that happens, it's best that we know that you truly were afraid. And as you can see, I didn't egg you in on that and try to get you to come in here and say that. You and Mr. Carlo are having the same feelings. We spoke to him yesterday. So you've been there 20 years, just to recap on everything, you've been there 20 years. So you got a good idea of what the average person coming in there to do does, right? Comparing his actions to the normal person, everyday person, is night and day. It's way different, right? Okay. So that in and of itself raises some red flags for you, right?
Calling your attention to the color of the thin blue line drawn around the border of Owsley's Ward 1 campaign material, you'll notice that this color exactly matches the thin blue line appearing now on the flag of Officer Davis's headwear. So what about Owsley? His role as judge and jury was to sort out what happened in the library before Travis was arrested. He knows the legal standard, but he hates Travis. I would read you a quote from Owsley's campaign, but I'd end up with vomit in my mouth. He blurred out the timeline of when certain suspicious accusations were made because he is only able to see Ward 1 through the eyes of the police. Through Davis's timeline fabricated report, witness statements and restatements, and coaching of witnesses by the police, substantial effort was made to demonize and dehumanize Travis. Unfortunately, this is the standard procedure in a police cover-up. What followed was done with the goal of no accountability for the police and no expense to the Natchitoches taxpayers. What followed was straightforward cover your ass, and now it's time for cleanup.